Our next speaker is well known to regular attenders at the SPO conference. We have Simon Duan with us. He's been doing some really interesting theoretical work in attempting to understand the nature of consciousness and its relationship to psi. And I think in that tradition then today would fit very well. He's going to tell us about a computer simulation model of psi.
Thank you, Chris. So the title is Computer Simulation of Psychokinesis. It's a new experimental tool for psi research. I'll start by reviewing the simulation hypothesis, and now introducing the concept of Platonic computer, which is at the core of my model. It's called Platonic computation. And then I'll discuss the model's testability. Then I'll go through the computer simulation of psychokinesis. In science, we tend to model the perceived reality based on metaphors. So in mechanical era, we are familiar with clock and watches. So we modeled the macro universe as a clock-like machine. When the human society was electrified, we became familiar with the concept of electricity. So we start to model the micro-universe in terms of electrically charged particles. We have a nuclei, which is positively charged, electrons negatively charged. Now we are in the information age. So we have new metaphors like computer information processing, big data, virtual reality. So all those metaphors, all those new concepts give us new inspirations to come up with new models of reality. So not surprisingly, some scientists have pioneered the idea of computational universe. Konrad Rose, a German computer scientist, first speculated that the entire universe is being computed on a computer. John Wheeler, the renowned physicist, proposed a famous phrase, "it from bit." All things physical are information theoretic in origin. Edward Fredkin suggested that there is this place called other that hosts the engine that runs the physics. In recent years, the speculation has been increasingly taken seriously by prominent thinkers, including philosophers, cosmologists, physicists, biologists, and technology leaders.
What is life for Elon Musk?
As I get older, I find that question to be confusing or troubling. I think particularly when you see the advancement of something like video games. Like say 40 years ago, the most advanced video game would be like Pong, where you had like two rectangles and a dot. But now you can see a video game that's photorealistic and millions of people playing simultaneously, and you see where things are going with virtual reality. Then eventually those games will be indistinguishable from reality. They'll be so realistic, you will not be able to tell the difference between that game and the reality as we know it. How do we know that that didn't happen in the past and that we're not in one of those games ourselves?
Tonight's topic is the universe a computer simulation? We've got some highly thoughtful, talented, respected people to weigh in on this.
The more I learned about later on as a physicist, the more struck I was that when you get deep down under the hood about how nature works, how can I be sure that this mathematical reality isn't actually some kind of game or simulation?
In my research, I had found this very strange thing, error correcting codes. Error correcting codes are what make browsers work. So why were they in the equations that I was studying about quarks and leptons and supersymmetry? And that's what brought me to this very stark realization that I could no longer say that people like Max were crazy.
So you're saying as you dig deeper, you find computer code writ in the fabric of the cosmos?
computer code, strings of bits of ones and zeros.
The guy who really started forcing scientists to take this a bit more seriously and gave this idea a bit more scientific street cred, I think, is Nick Bostrom, my fellow Swede, and Nick Bostrom.
We are almost certainly living in a simulation. It's a little bit complex, but it's really not more complex than most educated people could probably get their heads around if they thought about it for half an hour, kind of, if they actually tried.
You know, there's this interesting argument by your colleague at Oxford, Nick Bostrom. He argues that the notion of a simulated universe, what do you think about that?
I can't see how you could refute it. I mean, I can't see how you would actually be sure that we're not.
To progress from speculation to a scientific model, we need to address some key questions, such as where is the computer and what's it made of? We don't have time to go into the second question, so I just give a very brief summary answer to the second question. The answer is the computer is made of consciousness. It is made by consciousness. It is made with consciousness, and it is made from consciousness. So it is an idealistic model of the reality. So if you're interested in the more details, you can go to my publications. To address the first question, we adopt an insight from arguably the greatest philosopher of all time. Whitehead once noted, the safest general characterization of the European philosophical tradition is that it consists of a series of footnotes to Plato. Although Plato has been vastly undervalued and almost dismissed in the last few centuries, I think it's a pity. I believe it is a time actually to go back to Plato, to take his wisdom seriously. According to Plato, physical reality is a shadow or poor imitation of the ideal realm of forms. Archetypes exist in the realm of forms and operate as the fundamental reality. Material objects in the physical reality only resemble their perfect archetypes to varying degrees. For example, for every mundane material existence, there is a corresponding archetype in the realm of forms. The dogs of all shapes and sizes in the material reality are poor imitation of an abstract archetype, dog form. Corresponding to the variety of apples, for example, in our material reality, there is an appleness in the realm of forms. Based on such a principle, we postulate that the everyday material computer made of silicon is only a shadow or poor imitation of the perfect abstract metaphysical computer that exists in the realm of forms. We call this abstract metaphysical computer Platonic computer. We hypothesize that it is the Platonic computer that renders the perceived reality. That is, the cause of cosmos is Platonic computation. With this new paradigm, we'll have a new perspective. From new perspective, we'll have new understanding of the perceived reality. For example, laws of nature expressed by classical physics can be seen as an approximation of program subroutine in the Platonic computer. An apple is programmed to fall at an acceleration of 9.8 meters per second square. Magnets are programmed to repel or attract to each other according to their polarity. We'll be able to explain many phenomena we couldn't explain before. Modern physics describes the phenomena of entanglement, but is not able to give a cause of such entanglement. In Platonic computation, the two particles are basically two outputs in the 3D space from running the same program. So it is like two dots on the computer screen, and they actually entangle by programming at the back end. We postulate that in the Platonic computer database, there is a subset of data which have a highly stable data structure and robust program to govern those data structure. So this subset of data structure thus appear at the phenomenological level as obeying the laws of physics. Therefore, classical physics can be taken as a special case of Platonic computation. We are not trying to overturn classical physics. We simply incorporate it in a new paradigm as a special case. Platonic computation not only renders physical reality, it is also responsible for generating non-physical realities in parallel universes, such as what we experience in ASP state, dreaming state, meditation state, psychedelic state, and near-death state. The perceptual experience in these states of consciousness, according to this model, are not illusion or fantasy. They are basically rendered by this Platonic computer at parallel universes. Yeah. So in this model, the computer actually can operate at a different clock speed, which can give out different parallel universes, which refresh at a specific refresh rate, and therefore give out to specific vibration frequency. And also the perception of time is different at each parallel universes. So we have a different clock running at different parallel universes. Majority of content of conscious experience is imagery. Such content can be rendered systematically and effectively through computation, as we can demonstrate with the physical computer. Yeah. So otherwise, how can we account for origin of such diverse imagery? Yeah. Even you label those imageries as illusion, you still need to explain how this imagery come into existence. Thus, Platonic computation provides a clear, simple, yet powerful mechanism for content creation for our conscious experiences. As you can see, the introduction of Platonic computer allows us to build a hypothesis for the cause of perceived reality. In science, hypothesis needs to be tested. The question is, can we test this hypothesis? Traditionally, we test the hypothesis through physical experiments. Nowadays, scientists increasingly use computer simulation as experiment. Indeed, computer simulation is now accepted as a type of experiment and is used extensively for studying complex systems that are difficult or impossible to replicate in the laboratory settings. For example, in astrophysics, hypotheses about the evolution of the universe, the structure of the galaxy, and the behavior of black holes have been tested through computer simulation. Simulations in the particle physics are used to test the hypothesis about the behaviors of particles. Although we cannot access Platonic computer by our normal senses. We have access to its shadow. We have access to its simulation, the physical computer. By programming a physical computer to render virtual reality, we can simulate how the Platonic computer renders physical reality. There's a parallel in this. For example, by programming a physical computer to render virtual physical property, we can simulate how the Platonic computer renders real-world physical reality, physical property. Yeah. So what is matter? Matter is basically existence with physical properties. But the physical properties can be actually rendered by coding. Using regular gravity and rigidity as a parameter in computer program, we can simulate how an apple falls and bounces on a table. The Platonic computation model also allows us to build a causal chain of pk as following. Pk agent interacting with the Platonic computer causes parameter changes in the Platonic program, and manipulating parameters in the Platonic program causes phenomena of pk. Because the Platonic computer is in the realm of forms, it is beyond space and time. It is non-local. This implies that the pk agent does not have to be in the vicinity of the physical system to be affected. The pk agent can interact with the Platonic computer anywhere, and the Platonic computer can render the physical movement anywhere. Therefore, one of the testable predictions of this model is that the pk phenomena can be activated remotely. An experiment I'm very keen to do is to get a psychic in China to turn a pinwheel located in Europe. So if that can be successful, we can actually prove the cause of pk is non-local. If anyone here is interested in collaborating with this experiment, please follow up with me. Using a physical computer, we can simulate pk at multiple levels. At the causal level, we can simulate a pk agent interacting with the Platonic computer through human-machine interface, interaction. At the programming level, we can simulate manipulating parameters in the Platonic program through manipulating parameters in mundane computer program. At the phenomenological level, we can simulate real-world pk with virtual pk. Here is an example of human-machine interaction, which simulate a pk agent interacting with the Platonic computer. At the programming level, we can manipulate the parameters in a mundane computer program, which simulate the manipulation of the Platonic computer programs. Yeah, for example, by turning gravity off, we can simulate levitation. By switching rigidity off, we can simulate a solid object passing through a solid barrier. By switching visibility on-off, we can simulate appearing and disappearing of a physical object. In parapsychological study of PK, we are not able to reproduce desired results on demand. It is also challenging or even impossible to impose an appropriate level of control on mental state of PK agent. We therefore propose, as demonstrated just now, using computer simulation as a supplementary experimental tool for PK research. Because mainstream science is already doing it, we should be able to allow to do it too. Yeah, for anything which is non-repeatable. You cannot take a big bang back in the lab. So you have to do computer simulation. We cannot reproduce PK all the time. So we can play with the computer simulation. In summary, we propose that PK can be modeled as the processing output of the Platonic computation. The hypothesis describes a two-stage causal chain of PK. First, PK agent interacting with the Platonic computer, causing parameter changes in a Platonic program. Second, manipulating parameters in a Platonic program renders phenomena of PK. The proposed causal chain of PK can be tested through computer simulation using a material computer. Thank you for your attention.